Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Are you ready? Let's go do this. I'm excited. So let's dive in. When I was sent your bio and I learned about your book, I was really excited to have a conversation with you because you have such an eclectic and amazing background. You live in Norway, you're a general practitioner and emergency room physician, as well as a documentary filmmaker, author, and photographer. Okay, so, and I know we're going to get a chance to talk about your book, The Pulse Cure, which I read, I was fascinated with, and now I have to go out and get an Aura ring so that I can track my health just because I read your book.
Yeah,
But
great.
I wanted to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself some more.
Yeah. Yeah, my name is Torkil Faero. As you said, I've been working as a doctor for 25 years and as a freelance doctor. So I've been working part-time, for some weeks and months intensely around the clock, being on call around the clock. But that has given me the opportunity to pursue my other interests, like photography, like documentary filmmaking, like traveling, sailing. We have sailed with the family for 3 years, halfway around the world until COVID hit. And yeah, so working as a doctor has been a kind of, yeah, living a good life, to be able to make money from my interest in people and seeing how they live and helping people, then also have the freedom to go out and see the world and experience the world. So that was my main object, actually. So I wasn't initially so interested in health. It was more that I was, as a doctor, I would be able to travel the world and to learn interesting things. So the health interest actually has become a necessity, as you age and you understand that you have to take care of your health. And yeah, that's a little bit of the explanation. Yeah.
Well, I know from reading the book that your pursuit of health, that you weren't really that healthy. You want to talk a little bit about that journey and what prompted the change?
Yeah, or it would be around 10 years ago. So, and that was when my father died. So we were actually sailing. We had been sailing for a year. We were at the Panama Canal, just waiting to go through. And then I got a text message, from my family that my dad they had discovered cancer. I had to go home. And I took a look at myself, and 3 months later, he was dead, unfortunately. And then I had to look at myself in the mirror, and what I saw was a person going the same way as my patients. I was 40 pounds overweight. I did not care much about what I was eating, how I was sleeping. My concern was living a good life, experiencing things, going sailing, going photographing, traveling. And I had just neglected the focus on the health. Also because we as doctors did not believe it mattered so much. I had the notion that if I did everything right, I may get 2 or 3 extra years. But to get those 2 or 3 extra years, you had to make an effort for 2 and 3 years. So why bother? But then I discovered that there was so much more information, so much more knowledge about how to stay healthy, regarding sleep, regarding nutrition, exercise, alcohol, stress levels, everything that we now take for granted. Now this is mainstream medicine. If you listen to any health podcast, this is the subject. If you listen to Peter Attia or Mark Hyman or Rangan Chatterjee in England, or whoever. This is now the mainstream of medicine, preventative medicine. But we did not learn that, 15, 20 years ago. We only learned how to categorize diseases and identify them and find the right pill or the right surgery, or whatever. So, and of course, once I found out that you had so much more agency over your health than I believed, then I changed everything. So I started sleeping better, taking care of exercising, and suddenly, I remember I saw in the mirror, I saw a face that I haven't seen like in 25 years. When you lose, 40 pounds, you look quite a bit different, and suddenly I was back, after like 25 years. uh, recognizing the old self in the mirror, because I had been an athlete, in my teenage years. So yeah, I changed around everything, and so and that's a good thing about, I think, about the book, that I've done every mistake that I mentioned in the book. The mistake I've done myself. So I'm kind of not the expert just telling everybody how to live, without having been through it myself. Yeah.
So the book, you draw the connection between learning about the heart rate variability and using current technology. How did you get interested or in that, or make the connection that we can use our technology in order to help us monitor our health?
That was there has been a lot of accidental discoveries along the way, and one of them was that I was reading a book called "The Body Keeps the Score" by Bessel van der Kolk, a psychiatrist, one of the big bestsellers. And in that book, he mentions heart rate variability, and this is only 5 years ago, and I had never heard of it as a doctor, even. So, and I understood the importance of it, the importance of the autonomic nervous system, to be able to measure whether you are in the parasympathetic rest mode or in a sympathetic mobilizing stress mode. So, and this metric I understood from Bessel van der Kolk was something they used in psychiatry as a measure of the state of the patient. And when I came home, I understood also that there was devices like watches and rings and so on, where you could keep track of this, and that people already had. They already had the instrument on their wrists, already. So I started diving into this, and I started using it for myself initially. I did not plan to write a book or anything about it. But I started using it for my own health, and found out that there is so many of the stress factors that are hidden from us. So a lot of what stressed my system was, food, alcohol, lack of sleep, too much exercise, too little exercise. So many factors that I was not aware of that was affecting the system. And the heart rate is important because the heart rate can reveal the state, your physiological state of your body, how much stress there is on your body. And we don't really have a good sense of that. All our senses have been, throughout evolution and history, have been directed outwards to the threats of, lions and tigers and enemies and snakes and food that you're not supposed to eat and so on. So we have very good eyesight and hearing and smell and taste and sense of touch. But the sense of our inner state has just been in the way. So I'm sure that at least I cannot tell the difference between if my pulse rate is 60 or 80 a minute, you know, and that will be a huge difference in the level of inflammation and level of stress on the body. But we have never developed the sense of detecting this, because it has never been important until these days, where people have a lot of diseases and symptoms from too much stress in their everyday life and work life.
Hmm. You mentioned heart rate variability. Could you define that? So if somebody listening is like, what is like, what are we even talking about? Because the whole basis of your book is really on heart rate variability and monitoring what's going on the inside. So I think it would be a good idea to start there. But
Mm,
before you answer that, what I love about your book is that it has a theme of expedition to it. So as we're having our conversation, I feel like what you dove into in the book was just we're exploring. We're explorers. We're looking
mm,
into our bodies and we're exploring what our body is telling us and how it's different for everyone. There are some commonalities, but even between like the two of us, if we were to look at our measurements, they're going to be different because there's things that are different. So anyway,
mm.
yeah. So let's
Yeah.
let's talk about.
So it's
Let's go there.
yeah, that's right, because it's an expedition with a tool to discover your own body, your own physiology, and with these devices, which is like a compass, you could say, to discover your body. And it's like we are the first one on this continent, because we are the first one using this tool to discover our own body. So we discover a lot that for every answer we get, there are maybe two more questions, because we find out so much about the stress level. But what it does is that the heart rate, and then I'm talking heart rate variability, the variation between heartbeats. And as doctors, we used to think that the heartbeat, a good heartbeat, would be a very steady beat, but that is not the case. So if you are in the relaxed state, in the parasympathetic mode, the resting mode, where a lot of the recovery and restitution of your body takes place, then when you breathe in, your heart rate will go up a little bit because there are more oxygen in the lungs, and the heart speeds up to make use of that. And then when you breathe out, there's a little bit less oxygen in the lungs, and your heart slows down a little bit, measured in milliseconds, but detectable with the watches and rings and so on. But if you are in the stressed mode, for whatever reason, if your boss is nagging you, or you have a conflict at home, or you have been exercising too much, or you are eating something that you cannot tolerate, you're drinking too much alcohol, you're not sleeping enough, all of these things, can affect the stress level. And if you are stressed, the heart will beat at a very steady rate. It will, even though there is not as much oxygen in the lungs, it will still push through, also in this state where you have less oxygen in the lungs. And then you have, of course, these smartwatches and rings, they measure it throughout the day and night. And then you get a very accurate level, overview of your stress levels throughout the day. And then most people will find out, a lot of things that they would never imagine would stress or de-stress them. So and when you get this balance in order, then, well, you get rid of a lot of symptoms like brain fog and fatigue and all these things that is really really a trouble, I know, also in the States, but also in Norway.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought it was very interesting that you said that when our body is in a stress state, the heart rate is actually constant. I would have thought the opposite would have been true. Why would it be constant when you're in a stressed state?
Because it needs all the powers that you can
Oh,
mobilize, because your life is in danger.
mm.
So our operative system, is older than Microsoft or Apple. It's we have an ancient operative system that will think that, okay, if you are stressed, then your life is at stake. There's something threatening you, and this very old part of our system do not distinguish if this is 2024 or before or after Christ. It would just recognize there's a threat here, and you have to use all your powers to survive. And we are made to have short bouts of stress. If you're hunting or fleeing from somebody, or having a conflict, and then just relax and sleep all night, when it's dark and so on. So we are actually made to be the majority of the day in the relaxed mode, and just parts of the day in the stress mode. And we can tell that because the hunter gatherers, they still exist. And if you put these watches on them, you will see that they are in moderate activity, 2 to 3 hours a day, and then the rest of the day they relax. And that is the way our body is constructed for. So when we do almost the opposite, we are just calm maybe for 5 hours a day when we sleep, and the rest of the day we are in some kind of stress. We're just overtaxing the system, and the immune system is not able to do its work. So and then we get sick. So we get the inflammation based diseases which root cause is a low grade chronic inflammation because of the stress on our systems. So once you get rid of that, once you get your balance more in order, the risk of contracting all these diseases, the modern day lifestyle diseases, cancer, heart disease, autoimmune diseases, dementia, Parkinson, a lot of these diseases will diminish. It probably not go away, but it will diminish quite effectively.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Just by monitoring what's going on the inside, you can
Mm.
adjust your life accordingly and take care of some of these things that are going on. You
Yeah.
mentioned about stress. And at least over here in the US, like everyone's like, live a stress free life. You have to be stressless. Like everyone's looking to try and eradicate stress from their life. But you mentioned about good stress. How
Yeah.
do you define the difference between I mean, bad stress and good stress? What does that look like? And how does that affect the heart rate variability?
Yeah, whether it's good stress or kind of optimistic stress, stress that you want in your life, fun and hunt and all these exciting things that is also stress, of course. Um, or bad stress, something that you dread or something that you fear, that will not show in the be different in the heart rate variability. So you have to interpret what's going on yourself. Have you had a fun day or a terrible day? You have to use your own intelligence and the watch's intelligence and combine the two intelligences to get the total overview. But you can also say that we need stress. So we are made to stress, but we are made to compensate for the stress by rest also. So if you have stress in your life, then you should view it and regard it as positive, really, even if even if it's kind of stressful. So research has shown that if you think stress is good for you, then you are more healthy and live longer. And if you think stress is bad for you, then you get more sick and live shorter. There's actually a great book, and there are TED Talks about this subject from Kelly McGonigal. It's called "The Upside of Stress." Is her book, and she has lots of. If you go up on YouTube, you will find what she says. And that is because if you are optimistic, if you are in the hunting mode or challenge mode, you might say, you think you can do it, then the peripheral vessels of your circulation, your blood system, uh, will be larger, and you get more blood into your organs and the brain and so on. But if you are fearful, then you are contracting the same vessels, because in the evolutionary times, being fearful meant that somebody was hunting you down, and the chances of bleeding was there. So you needed to contract the blood vessels, the arteries, and so on, to minimize bleeding. So, of course, if you are in a fearful state of stress every day for a long time, for months on end, it will have consequences.
Hmm. I've heard it said before that the body can't tell the difference between fear and excitement. What's your experience in the science? Like, is that
Yeah,
true?
yeah, that would be exactly what this is. That if
Okay.
you have the same, if I in front of, like, if I say, if I'm doing a lecture, for 200 people, which I used to fear a lot, but now I do it every week. So it's I'm through that. Um, so if I think that this is only negative and scary, um, then then you get scared, and it will have this impact, restricting impact on your performance. But if you just think differently and think that, okay, this is just exciting, this is, I'm pumped up, I'm ready for action here, ready for the match, then your body will react different physiologically. So, because we have, I think, medicine and medical society has underestimated the power of our ancient system, that we have brains and physiology that are millions of years old, the basis of it. So we have been overestimating our prefrontal cortex, the intellectual side of us, and kind of overlooked that we are really, in some ways, animals still, and have this basic operating systems. I would call it, in the book, I call it an inner living fossil. So the bottom part of our brain, the reptilian brain, that you can say, like, the brain stem and so on, the basic functions, the autonomic nervous system, is kind of an inner living fossil that we are still dragging along, and that we have to take more into consideration. And it is this system that you are able to track using the heart rate monitors.
So you talked about rest, and actually, we were talking about being excited. What are some things that you would do? The opposite is like rest and relaxation. It's like, okay, I'm in a constant state of being stressed out. What are some of your suggestions that you would give to people? Say, okay, you got to bring the body down off of that stress.
I would do breathing exercises, slow breathing. There are lots of apps that can help you also. The most important thing is to breathe slow, which is kind of a signal to your system that things are quiet, slow down and relax. So that would be important to slow down maybe to 4 seconds on the in breath and 6 seconds on the out breath for a total of 6 breaths a minute. Normally we breathe, 12 to 15, or stressed people could breathe even more than that. So that's a way to calm us down. And maybe to use it, like 1 minute here and there throughout the day, before a meeting, before a phone call, before you go home to your family, and so on. Or you can do like 10, 15, 20 minutes of it in one session. That would be one thing. And of course, meditation, mindfulness, and also actually one of very effective trick is to use cold water, cold showers, cold water immersions, cold plunges that I understand is also popular in the US. So it's really popular here as well. People are, and me included, going out through the icy water, and that actually has a kind of calming effect on the body.
Okay, so let's talk about the cold plunge and the cold showers for a minute, because if somebody's never done it before, the first thought that came to my mind was it's not safe for the body. Because if you're going
Yeah,
into this cold, situation, you think of hypothermia, that the body would, like, shut down and something adverse would happen, so,
yeah,
obviously, it's not true. So, talk about the
yeah,
multiple benefits of, like, cold shower. I personally take a 2-minute cold shower every morning,
yeah,
and it does, you're
yeah,
right, it does, it's energizing.
yeah. And it's energizing and calming. So your heart rate when you get the Aura Ring, or the Garmin watch, preferably. When I'm talking about like maneuvering your nervous system with the watches, I prefer Garmin to all the others. It's the best tool. So with an Aura Ring, you would not see this, but with a Garmin watch, you would see that after this cold shower, that your nervous system and your pulse, your heart rate would go down afterwards. Um, and this is part of the reason why you feel both energized and calm after a cold shower of 2 minutes. And 2 minutes is ideal. It's exactly the same as I do. If I've been running, for example, I may do 3 minutes. If it's been a hard run, then I maybe do five. So you can dose your cold showers also, and you can adjust when you see the watch. You see the results on the watch. So you can see the effect of it. So and I used, of course, once again, I used to hate cold water. I would never even swim in Norway, even if it would be maybe 68 degrees Fahrenheit in the water. Yeah, I would not swim. I would only swim in the Mediterranean or in the Caribbean or the Pacific or wherever. But and of course you would think, why would you? Why do that? It's cold. It's uncomfortable. But once we challenge our systems with the temperature, we get stronger. We get a better circulation, a better heart, a better immune system. And the reason is that we are made to live in different temperatures. So our physiology is made to be hot and cold. And what we have done these days is to make it very comfortable for us. So we are staying more or less in the same temperature zone, in the throughout the day. And that kind of is putting restrictions on our physiology. We are not made for that. And once we start challenging it, we grow stronger, and we also grow something that is called, or develop something that is called brown fat. Earlier, we used to learn in medical school that that was just for kids, for children, from really small children, because they could not shiver as a response to cold. But now, when we see that people are using cold plunges, we see that they're kind of waking up the system of brown fat. and it's brown because it contains mitochondria that will be better at regulating your temperature. And yeah, so there are these functions that comes to life again when you start doing cold plunges.
Oh, cool. So brown fat. I never heard that. I might have, but I'm not sure. There's brown fat. Could you explain the different types of fat? Because I don't know. I mean, me not being a doctor, I'm like, fat is fat,
Yeah.
but now
Mm,
it's not,
yeah,
is
so
it?
so normal fat, you have different kinds of fat. You have the subcutaneous fat that's in your, below your skin, and that is kind of yellowish or whitish, and it contains only fat cells, and then you have the visceral fat, that is fat around your organs and in your liver, and that is the big problem, because this is the fat that will be sending out signals of inflammation. So if you have visceral fat and fat around your organs, that is a very bad thing, and it will create this state of chronic inflammation in your body that will lead to all this, cancer and heart disease and all the things that I mentioned. So those are one thing, but you also have the brown fat, which is just that the parts of the fat will develop these mitochondria as a response to challenging the temperature. So the mitochondria that are the very small parts of our cells. It's called the powerhouse of the cell, producing power. So if you get too cold, then the brown fat will have these mitochondria that will start working to produce heat, uh, to to make you warmer from kind of the inside. So anyway, to start the system again is healthy for us, so usually you can think that, okay, did they do this in ancient times, were they cold and warm? Yes, they were. Okay, that's a healthy. And actually some 100 years ago or more, there were sometimes coming out something they called wolf children out of the forest, like in India. They had been out all their lives, and what they discovered were a few things. They discovered that they could not talk. They would never learn to talk. They would never learn to walk. They were walking on four legs, and they were ignorant to temperatures. So whether it was cold and warm, just like an animal out in the nature, uh, they did not care. Our temperature system is really geared towards a lot more tolerance of hot and cold. And if you do the cold plunges and sauna, then you are kind of exercising this system.
Huh, okay. So how would someone know like the difference between the fats then?
They would be able to take, for example, well, they would probably be able to take a DEXA scan. That would be a scan of your body. Then you would see if you have subcutaneous or visceral fat. That could be useful for a lot of people. So yeah, and if people are interested, I think that if you Google, the visceral fat, you would find information.
In your research, what role does nutrition play in health and how it even shows up when you're tracking that?
That was one of the biggest surprises, that food at all would have an impact on the heart rate. So and so I could see that eating certain meals, and then containing milk or gluten and flour-based bakery stuff and so on, that would be quite a big stress on my body. Something I would have never imagined. And I saw also that when I do intermittent fasting, then my body's in a very calm state. So although I may feel, hungry and feel, irritated, at least in the beginning when I did the intermittent fasting, then I could see from my heart rate that it was low, and that I had a good heart rate variability. And that is probably why, all religions, they have fasting. If you get sick, for example, then you will not want to eat. Um, it calms down the body and makes more energy available, to do the work of getting healed, from an infection or whatever. So where you would often think that you need to eat something, and of course The food industry will say that if you lack energy, you should eat, but it's more often that if you don't eat, you get the energy. So at least what I found. And earlier, I used to be hungry once in a while when I was eating all the time. You know, I did not care about what I was eating. I would eat breakfast and I would eat late at night. I wouldn't even think that it would affect my physiology in this way. So then I did not really care about what I was eating. But now, and then I was hungry, you know, eating breakfast, and then after 2 hours after that, hungry again, eating some more carbs, you know, and then hungry again. But now I eat from 11 until 7, more or less. And then I'm not really hungry outside those hours, even if I'm not eating. So, and of course, probably in the States, also intermittent fasting and is also probably very common.
Yeah, it's starting to catch on. I learned about it about 6 or 7 years ago, and I was like, "Oh, what is this?" You know, I because I was used to eating all the time. You get up in the morning, but I also was a runner t well, I still am a runner, and I noticed, like, I would get up, I'd run, and then I wouldn't eat for a couple hours later, maybe around 8 in the morning, 8:30, something like that. But then when I started learning about intermittent fasting, I didn't believe it too much at first, but I would say in the last year or so, I now I basically have that window, same as you. Like I'll eat around 11 o'clock in the morning, and then actually I stop at 6 or before 6 in the evening. And I realize that when I don't eat, it's the same thing. I have a burst of energy. I'm more focused. And then I started looking at what it was I was eating, like whether I was having a bowl of oatmeal or whether I was having yogurt with nuts and fat in there or something else. Like the less carbs I ate, the better I felt. In your experience, what have you, like you said, the 11
Yeah.
to 7 works.
So 12 to 6, 11 to 7, you know, it works for most people. And you can see it on the watch. You can see that it calms down the system. So that's also so nice that you see that what we know is good is measurable, and you're able to see the results of it. And that also, again, that if you go back to how did they eat in evolutionary times, this is the way they ate. You know, they didn't have a fridge. You know, they couldn't go. They had to find the food first. You know, going up in the morning, find the food and then eat it, and then after sundown, you know, it was dark. You were not eating anymore. Our intestines, our gastrointestinal tract, you know, digestive system is very vulnerable. It's only one cell from the contents of your bowels into the bloodstream, so it's a very, very sensitive system. And of course, this is also where 70% of the immune system is located along the digestive tract, because this is where the trouble is, you know, getting substances into your bowels that are not really supposed to be there, producing leaky gut. And because there are something called tight junctions between the cells in your gut, that of course is very important. Once it's only one cell layer, they are very important. And when you have this inflammation in your body from eating around the clock, eating food, ultra processed food, food that you cannot tolerate, then you get a poor system in your intestines that will leak through contents of your bowel into the bloodstream, that will create this inflammation. So a poor diet, you know, the standard American diet or Western diet is creating this inflammation. And once you start doing this intermittent fasting, or maybe you could rather call it restricted feeding window, that's probably more accurate. Then you give your digestive system enough time to recover. So that could have a lot of impact on your health. So I get messages, you know, that because the Pulse Cure has been on the best-selling charts in Norway now for 66 weeks running. So and on my Instagram, and I get a lots of comments from people, you know, that experiencing how their health improves, you know, when they do this restricted feeding window. So that is, I think, is one of the most effective ways to, yeah, to get better and to improve your heart rate variability.
You mentioned that in the United States, like we have, there's certain things in our diet that we really shouldn't be eating. And, I get it, the packaged, the processed foods. Are there any foods that you found that in your experience that you wouldn't think would cause an issue in the gut, but it really
Hmm.
does?
Yeah, for me, it's like pizza is one of the big problems. So that if I eat pizza in the evening, that will create stress long into the night for me.
What do you
And
think it is about
chili,
pizza?
I'm not sure. I'm not
Oh,
sure
okay.
exactly what it is, but it's my experience and lots of other people too. And also, if you eat, candies and crisps and chips and such things, also
Yeah.
um, will also be create a lot of stress. Chocolate, so a lot of these good things, unfortunately, will give you a certain amount of stress, and that gives you the opportunity to to balance this. It's when you see that there's also a physiological price for it, then you
Mm.
can see whether it's worth it or not. So, and one other thing that I'm surprised by for me is chili. So if I eat something with chili, that creates stress throughout the night, almost as much as from alcohol. And I can see that for other people, it's not that important. So what is also the good thing about these devices is that they can show the individual results. So that it shows how you are reacting to a certain thing, and not just how an average of the population would react, which we as doctors are used to use the average of a 10,000 people study, and not the individual result. So here you get the individual result on how you react to chili or crisps or alcohol or whatever.
Oh, interesting. Now the chili, that's fascinating. So chili is something, that's gonna be hot, right? It's a
Mhm.
hot spice. And heard, and this was a while ago, that if you wanted to lose weight, you would have a concoction of like chili powder or like cayenne pepper, that spice, that hot spice. It must do
Mhm.
something in the body to like ignite it. I don't know if
Yeah,
it ever really worked,
yeah.
but I thought that was very interesting that you would mention that. You mentioned chocolate. We love chocolate. I love chocolate.
Mhm.
I wonder, do you have any idea what it would be about chocolate that would stress the body out? Is it the caffeine?
No, no, I'm not sure.
No.
I'm not sure
No.
really.
What are your thoughts
It
on
may also
caffeine?
depend on the caffeine is good. According to Whoop, Whoop is one of the activity bands, and one of the best ones to track the heart rate variability. It's also Garmin and Whoop are American companies, so they are very good. And they say that, and they get the information from the users, and then they say that caffeine is good, and particularly if you take it only in the morning until maybe noon. And if you do much coffee after that, it will disturb your sleep. So that then it will be bad for you. So even if you are sleeping, you will not reach the same states of deep sleep as if you did not drink the caffeine.
Oh, that's good to know because I have my second cup around 2 in the afternoon. Now I'm gonna have to change that.
Yeah, yeah.
Do bulletproof coffee in the morning?
I put some MCT oil in it.
Yep,
Yeah,
I do
in the
too. I do
morning I
too.
do. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I had
I
a
do.
friend of mine, a guest on, and we were talking about bulletproof coffee, and, like, the concoction is butter, MCT oil, and if you want, you can put coconut oil in there as well. When you put the coffee in the blender with the butter, it actually
Mm,
gets, like, really creamy. I'm one of those, I like cream in my coffee kind of person, but I also
mm.
realized and learned that the cream breaks your fast. So if you're trying to
Yeah.
stay in a fasted state, really it's just
Mm.
the caffeine and the fats that you should have, but not adding in any of the carbs. That's what I
Yeah,
heard.
that is why I do only the MCT oil as well
Yeah.
in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can drink it black, I couldn't do it.
Mm,
I
yeah.
need to have a little
And
bit in there.
what's important also, your podcast is small steps, big wins. It's what's important is that you don't have to do too much. You can change a little bit on your sleep, a little bit on your exercise, a little bit on your diet, a little bit on your breathing exercises, and altogether it will be a big difference. So I'm really not talking about health optimization, where you may want you may use, big parts of the day to get more healthy, but small steps, small manageable steps that will bring you quite a lot along the way for a better health.
Oh, good. Well, let's go into some practical small steps. Anything else we can touch on? Like, what would be some small steps?
Yeah, for sleep, it would be to make sure that you have those 7 to 8 hours of sleep that you really need, and also to be able to track it to see that it's restorative sleep. And because if you sleep, for example, to show how actually dangerous it is to have poor sleep, it's if you sleep less than 6 hours, your chances of getting a cancer is double that than if you sleep more than 7 hours. And this was kind of incredible, because as a doctor, we worked a lot of nighttime, and of course we knew that it was uncomfortable being tired, but that it was dangerous, to your life, to be tired. We could not have imagined, but we see more and more the importance of sleep, and that the sleep is the body's, built-in system for recovery. So the easiest way to get better is to allow more time for sleep, and the body will do the job itself, just if you give it the time. So 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and that is best achieved by relaxing the 1 to 2 hours before bedtime, dimming the lights, slowing down, reading a book, whatever calms your system down. And this you would then be able to see on your Garmin watch. And to have the bedroom cool, I think from 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit would be a good temperature in the bedroom, and totally dark, as dark as you cannot see the hand in front of you. It should be that dark, really. So that's some hacks for better sleep. And I start the book with sleep because once you get your sleep in order, you get the energy to pursue the other parts of this expedition. And I call it expedition also because it's hard to change your life. Is hard even with these devices, and the guidebook. So when you know that it's an expedition, you kind of brace yourself for some struggle.
Yeah, and the book talks in about expedition, about being prepared too. It talks about all those small steps, those micro movements, those small changes that you can make in your life to actually bring about lasting change, which I enjoyed. I have a curious question. You talked about sleep and the importance of sleep. Do doctors still do 24-hour shifts?
Probably. So that's kind of the paradox, that the ones that are supposed to help the sick people are the ones with their stress balance most out of whack. I used to, my record I think was 53 hours working straight at the
Wow.
hospital.
What
So
what's the what's the
without sleep.
drive? Like, why is there a like,
It's just
why?
tradition. I think it's just tradition
Oh.
that that it's the tough doctors and so on. I'm not sure what it comes from, but anyways, not really not the most stressed out population, is the doctors, and doctors are also the profession with the highest amount of percentage of suicides. I
Oh,
think it's
wow.
almost double the next one.
Wow. Why do you think that
So
is?
I don't know, they're tired. They have high expectations of from themselves, and from the surroundings as well. They have a chances of making mistakes. People can die and get sick, and you can do blunders and so on. I think that, and also this lack of sleep, this stressful long working weeks. Because if you are stressed out, underslept, and underexercised and overstressed, then you cannot think clearly. So our prefrontal cortex, which can manage the thoughts, if the basic part of your brain is not in order, you cannot think straight, and you make mistakes. That may have something to do with it. At least when I hear people discussing it in the podcast and so on, this is what they mention. I'm not myself an expert in the field, so.
Oh, wow. Just to go back to the sleep, I started a couple months ago turning off my alarm. I actually find that my body's naturally doing the 7.5 hours of sleep, and I feel so much better in the morning. That was my small step that I made that I didn't think was gonna make a big difference, but it does. I'm the type of person I went for years and years and, like, less than 6 hours of sleep, and I'm like,
Mm,
"Oh, okay," I thought that was normal,
mm.
but,
It is normal. It's normal. It is just
it's
not healthy.
not
It's
advisable.
common. It's common. It's not
It's common.
healthy. Yeah. And for people interested, the very good book on this subject is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And if you look up Matthew Walker on YouTube or podcast, you will find lots of good information on sleep.
Let's go back to inflammation. What are some of those common things that cause inflammation and what inflammation really does to the body?
Inflammation is the body's natural response to threats, like wounds or damage or broken, legs and so on. So it's originally a very good and useful strategy for healing the body. But the problem is that when we are too stressed and living not the way that we are constructed for living in all the ways that I'm talking about in the book can create inflammation. Poor sleep creates inflammation. Poor diet, too much and too little exercise will create it. Alcohol will create it. Um, um, the week before menstruation, the menstrual cycle will create it. And of course, mental stress will also create it. And uh, the a level of inflammation in the body that is constant and low grade will make the cells worse and make them susceptible for all kinds of damage in all the organs. So what we have been doing as doctors is to see a disease in each organ by itself, but now we understand that the root cause of all these modern diseases is this low grade inflammation. So it's not only the joint pains and the kind of the obvious inflammation that we think of as inflammation, but it's really a state in the body affecting all the organs in the body. And this is why I remember as a young junior doctor, I was just amazed by it because we had learned everything about the different diseases, but that people came with maybe 10 of them each, one person having 10 of these diseases, that really shook me, and so many of it. But now we know that the reason why you can contract maybe 10 inflammatory diseases is because you have an inflammatory condition that will affect all the organs. And what we see then is that when you start getting the inflammation under control, that it will lessen the ache of the joints and so on. A lot of people with joint pain and rheumatoid arthritis and so on, when they get into the cold water or cold exposure, their symptoms are relieved and the inflammation goes down from the cold. So and usually we used to think that the heat was better, but it
Not the
seems that
case.
cold is so much better. Yeah, not the case.
Oh, wow.
So the
Wow.
inflammation is a big and complex subject. So it's a bit hard to explain it very very easily too. But but inflammation and I had the book gone through by immunologists. And also on the front page, it's a quote from the immunologist, and she says, that HRV is a measure of the level of inflammation. So your heart rate variability will tell you the level of inflammation. It's a sign of that. So
Oh, interesting. And your book goes in and as I was reading it, I was like, "Oh, okay, I can learn how to use my heart rate variability to measure these different markers that we've been talking about, like inflammation, and to see what
mm,
happens when you eat certain foods and stuff." So, I want people
yeah,
to understand that they could pick up your book, they can have one of these tools, and then they can use the book in order to interpret the results and help them, figure out what's going on in their
yeah.
bodies. You mentioned the Garmin watch, the Whoop, the Aura Ring. Can you touch on the difference between them and what your thoughts are on them?
I would definitely use a Garmin watch because it can track it 24 hours. It has a visual, easy to understand system, and they are cheaper. So I think you would get the cheapest one. That's probably Vivo Smart 5. It should cost maybe a little more than $100. and you're all set to go. And but of course, the more expensive, the more the better watches. So you could go up to a Garmin Forerunner 165. That would be also it will also have heart rate variability over time. And the very best ones, they would have what you call a training readiness. That could also be very important if you are exercising. So I would say that both the cheapest and best would be Garmin. And then maybe some people would still want to have their Apple Watch. If they have their Apple Watch, then the app that is called Athletic is what I find the best one so far. Athletic. And you could use that. But say that you want to have another watch, and then you can use a Aura Ring in addition to that. And it does also give you a more accurate overview of the sleep, of REM sleep. It's more precise regarding sleep. Um, and you also have the Whoop band that is also good at tracking your system. And the advantage of the Whoop band is that you can put in what you have done that day, and they will give you a weekly and monthly report and say that okay, when you eat this, it's not good for you, or when you drink alcohol, this is not good for you. So it will give you a report actually that is quite fascinating. So I use all of these three. So I have the Aura Ring here, the Garmin watch here, and the Whoop band here. So I use them all at the same time, also to compare it and to get kind of a second opinion on this. So
Okay, okay. Is there one
mm,
that gives different information that the other doesn't give, or do they all pretty much give you the same output?
they pretty much give me the same. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
there will be small differences in how they approach it and how they deliver the message, so to speak. So people who just want to have just a glance at the state of their body, then Aura and Whoop would be good because you kind of check it in the morning and then you get the overview, and that's it. You don't need to check it throughout the day that you would do with a Garmin. So that is both pros and cons of this. So of course, some people they don't like to get too involved. They may be stressed by watching the pulse and so on. So maybe that would be a better solution, for them.
As I mentioned in the beginning, you do have an eclectic background and you've traveled a lot too. Uh, what
Yeah.
what are some lessons that you've learned from your travels and your experiences across different cultures that's shaped your approach to health and well-being? I'm curious on that.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I've been traveling around. Yeah, 80 since I was 21 years old, traveling, backpacking or sailing. Travel in any form has been my passion. Because I early on in life, from when I was a child, understood that okay, life is short. I want to see everything as much as I can during my, hopefully 80 years on the planet. So I've been into the Amazon, and I've been to the US, to Canada, to Africa, all around Asia, and sailing into the Pacific and the Caribbean, and yeah. So I'm not sure if I have any conclusions of that, but I've seen maybe what I've seen is that you don't need so much to be happy. So that yeah, let's say I worked as a doctor for Doctors Without Borders in Angola. It was a war. The war had just ended, and half the population had died during that war. Um, and on the hospital, I was treating children, and they were probably three children dying every day from malnutrition, from infections, from malaria, diarrhea, all these things. And still, they were so happy. So still, I came to Angola and was prepared to just see. This was in 1996, so I didn't have any internet or anything to prepare for what I was seeing. So I thought it was just be misery, and just be hopelessness. But in the midst of this trouble, people were so lively, so energetic, so smiling that I had never seen before. And then when I came back home, uh, that I was not prepared for either. That when I came back home, I was seeing a lot of grumpy faces, people complaining about, negligible or petty complaints about everything. So I think that kind of colored my whole experience later. Then I saw that, okay, in Angola they had their problems, but we certainly have our problems too. So even though we have all the chances of living, there has never been a population in history that has had the same uh, possibilities to live fulfilling, meaningful, joyful lives than we have. And still, a lot of people seem not to be happy, you know. And of course, as you can see from the prescriptions, there's so many antidepressants, so many anti-anxiety, so much opioids, so much medication is being giving out because people are miserable. Even if we would have the chance to live fantastic lives. So that was kind of the puzzle for me, and that has probably been somewhat that has been driving me on this journey towards better health. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think they were so happy? Because their circumstance certainly, I mean, you're in a war-torn country and you've watched a lot of death and destruction. What do you think made them so happy? And then you come back to wherever you went back to, whether it's Norway or you can come back to the States, it
Norway
doesn't
and
matter.
Norway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. Whether you're in Norway or you're in the States, the result would still be the same because there's a lot of miserable, unhappy people here
Mm.
too. And we
Yeah.
have basically everything that, we want. Why do you think that was?
There may be many reasons. They, of course, they knew what was at stake. You know, they knew that they were happy to be alive. They knew that this day is not to be taken for granted. And they had each other. You know, they were together. Not so much loneliness or no loneliness. You know, so a lot of the problem for the depressing state is loneliness. And they were not lonely. They were together all the time. You know, dancing, singing. The children having one meal a day, tiny meal a day, was dancing all the time and running around. Um, so they have their community, their being together in difficult situations. I think is something that we are made for, and being separate, you know, in easy situations, you know, or seemingly easy, comfortable situations, we're not made for.
Hmm,
So maybe there's something in
interesting.
that.
Yeah,
It's still a
interesting.
puzzle. I haven't solved the puzzle.
Yeah, I have to wonder if, like you said, we have easy lives. I have to wonder if that's what's producing the depression sometimes, because when you don't have a purpose or you don't have a meaning and your life is just simple and easy, there's not a whole lot of thought or conflict going on. I wonder if that
Hmm.
contributes to it.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't have an answer
absolutely.
on that one,
Yeah, I
but
would think so. Yeah, I would think so. So these people, they knew why they were getting up in the morning, you know. And they have you know, the paradox of choice, that it's also a problem that we have so many choices. It kind of you know, leads to a paralysis, you know, when you stand in front of all the choices also, and you may always wonder, should I have taken that choice instead? And of course, these people in Angola, they didn't have much choices. You know, what they were going to do that day was pretty obvious. You know, getting food, you know, getting food for the family.
yeah.
So in that sense, it's an easier life. Yeah.
What do you do when you're faced with so many choices? Like, how do you mitigate those?
I usually choose by intuition and fast. I don't consider all the options and then go for something. I just listens to what I feel is I want, and then I just go for it fast. Yeah.
Do you have a memorable story about some small steps that you took in your personal life that you didn't think was gonna have a big result?
No, maybe just writing books, because that was just an idea that I got 10 years ago. I'd never written a book or written anything, you know, since high school or the university. And suddenly I got the idea that I should write a book. And then I started writing and self-publishing. And now I have a book, you know, that is going out to the whole world in a subject that is quite new. Is still this is still the only book on how to the guidebook on how to use heart rate variability in practice. Even though wearables are ubiquitous, it's all around. Everybody has it. So it may be that I kind of made the decision to start writing, even though I had no experience in it.
Just starting, right? But, well, I'm
Yeah,
glad
just
you wrote
just
the book 'cause
starting
I
and yeah, start
good.
before you're ready. Just start, and then you do the mistakes and errors, and then you learn from that, and you go from there.
What was one thing you thought, would be hard about writing a book, but really wasn't? And then flip it around. What did you think would be easy and turned out being more challenging?
It takes a longer time than I thought. I'm currently writing the next book, so it takes more time, takes more effort, it takes more rewriting. It takes maybe I wasn't aware of that. I needed to rewrite maybe 10 times the script as a strategy. I didn't know that before I started, but that takes longer time. But it gets it's the way to write books. I understand.
I'm learning that myself. I'm in the process of writing my own book. And
Yeah,
I thought, "Oh, it'd only take a couple months and you go from writing to
mm,
book," but they're like, "No, it doesn't do that."
yeah, yeah. And also the amount of because I learned so much by writing. Because you really have to learn what you're writing about.
Mhm.
So that it has been almost more important is what I've learned, than uh, than what I've written in the book. But
Yeah.
it's a way of yeah, digesting and getting information. And yeah.
How did you feel when you finished writing the book? You knew it was done and it was now published.
uh, I can't remember, but I remember when I got note of that it has been bought for worldwide distribution. That was just amazing. That I had written something. One thing that is, it's been a huge success in Norway, but that it was actually something that I had written as a non-author almost, at least before 10 years ago. That would be distributed to the US and Australia and in UK, and it's sold to Denmark and Sweden and Holland and Poland. And that was when I got notice of that, it was just, is this possible, So I remember that. I can't really remember when I finished the book. I can't remember that. So
Yeah, that's amazing. If you could go back in time to your younger self and deliver a message, what would it be?
it will be just just an easy one, dude. But it was a message that I also followed when I was a child. That do what you want, follow your desires, kind of go for the adventure. And I would probably say the same thing that I said to myself at the time. I haven't changed it. It has proved to be a good strategy.
I like
So I say
asking
that to
that
my
question.
children. I say that to my children as well. That
Yeah,
you must find out what you want to do, and you start from there. And things will show up. Things will come your way. You don't overthink or overplan. Just start with what you get used to, finding out what you want, and start it now.
I like that advice. I enjoy asking that question just to see what
Mm,
people will respond.
mm.
So I ask all my guests the same three questions. First is, can you please share a book or resource that's had a significant impact on you? And I know that's hard for somebody who's a researcher and a doctor.
Mm, yeah, I would say that I would say that there are lots of books. I think one of the books that inspired me early on was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. In a more literary way, then it's a fable, it's a story. But from this kind of self-help books that I've been reading, I read a lot of Ryan Holiday. I really like The Obstacle is the Way. That the difficulties that you face, they are to be used and to be appreciated, and not to be shy away from. So I would say that, and maybe Mastery by Robert Greene also. you don't you don't have the time to do all the mistakes yourself. You really have to read and learn from other people's mistakes. Uh, in one book, of 400 pages, you get so much life experience into it. So that's actually one of the bad things about having written a bestseller is that I get less time for reading books myself. So I used to read like maybe 50 books a year, and now I'm probably down to 15 or 20 or so.
Is that just because you're busy writing or
Just
why?
because I'm busy writing and,
Yeah.
and speaking and everything that comes along.
Yeah. Yeah. What's one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic? And I know we could go probably talk longer,
Mhm.
but I love that
Yeah.
question so much.
That is difficult. That would be probably something about photography. I have written a book. It's called "The Camera Cure," about how to use photography, and that how you approach the little difficulty of taking a picture is how you confront everything. So that may have something to do with photography. We haven't been talking about photography, and photography has all the way been my big passion, throughout these 25 years too. So that would be something about photography.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Well, and photography was my way into the Pulse Cure also, because I was doing a lot of workshops. I was being student on a lot of workshops, and later I was teaching a lot of workshops, maybe 60 workshops all around the world. And I saw that when you are photographing, you are using your nervous system in a very good way. You are hunting pictures, you are gathering pictures, you are sharing pictures with the other ones, and you are doing something very basic to our physiology and our brains. So I was always at my most happy being out photographing together with other people. And then little by little, I realized that you can learn a lot from the act of taking a picture, being present, being patient, accepting that you will not be very good when you start, um, visualizing the image before you are there, seeing what you want to grab, and to grab the moments. Not just being in the moment, but you have to take action and decide when is the right moment. And then also, after you have taken the picture, you have to look at the picture. How did it work out? Did I manage to accomplish what I hoped for? And then also the fact that you can share it with other people, get their opinions on what you have done. Um, yeah. So there are many of these that I found was, that Buddha is quoted to have said, you never know who has said what anymore, but the way you do something is the way you do everything. And so I thought, okay, the way you take a picture is the way you can do anything else. And I experienced as a doctor that many of my patients had problems with coping skills, to face adversity, to take opportunities. And then I thought, okay, can I use photography as a way to teach them how to do this? And that was a camera cure. And unfortunately, not yet published in English, but it has been quite popular in Norway.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Do you notice then when you do photography that you see the results then on the like that you track using your HRV?
And that was part of my curiosity, because when I, as a doctor or as a medical student, we had learned that the autonomic nervous system was fight, flight, and freeze. And um, that would mean that when I'm out photographing, I would just be calm. And then I saw that I'm not. I'm in a hunting mode. So that is also stressful. Even though it's positive, it's fun, it's a stressor. It's not the parasympathetic mode as you would expect, just from learning the fight, flight, and freeze. And I actually called my professor in neurology. In about he has written the textbook on the central nervous system. So I asked him, "What's this? You know, I'm doing something fun and it's still stressful. What is this?" And then he said, "Maybe you're onto something." He didn't know either. So this was actually my way into being interested in the autonomic nervous system and into the pulse cure. So I saw that when I'm photographing, I'm all as stressed as running from a lion or something. You know, you're focused, you are moving, you're full of adrenaline. You know, you're chasing your picture.
That would be good
So that
stress
was
then.
actually the good stress, yeah.
Good stress.
But you still have to take it into the total balance of it. So that's what happens to a lot of people when they do fun things all the time. They think that they're not taxing their system, but they are.
Mm.
So you
Mhm.
still need to recover from fun activities and not just
Interesting.
negative or fearful stress. Yeah,
Yeah. Being on all the time. I used to
yeah,
think that it's really good. Well, now I'm learning that it's not good to be on all the time. You have to
yeah,
actually do rest and come down and
yeah.
based on what you're doing. So, yeah.
And yeah,
Oh my gosh.
in addition to that, the rest mode, the between the action is also a very creative mode. That
Mm,
is when you think about what you have done, you plan for the next move, and so on. So in the big study of Anders Ericsson, where the big famous 10,000 hour study for deliberate practice, they also found out that they had deliberate rest. So they were
mm,
better at sleeping and better at taking naps, and that was more productive. They performed better when they rested more. So
mhm,
it's not just useless downtime that you need. It's a creative, productive phase of the whole of
mm,
the whole
mm.
process.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. So as we in my last question that I love to ask everybody, so as we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
That would be to prioritize their sleep. I would say the most important. Get half an hour more sleep. If you are sleeping less than 7 hours, yeah,
Oh,
try
that's
to
easy.
go to bed a little bit earlier. Yeah.
That works. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. How can people find you, reach out to you besides buying a copy of your book called The Pulse Cure on Amazon? Well, would be for here anyway.
Mhm. Yeah, they could join. We have a social website called thepulsecure.com, and there you could see video lectures. I have a blog there. You can post questions. It's kind of like a Facebook page. The membership is not expensive. It's like $20 a year, just because I think that getting healthy should not ruin you of your money. So, and in the Norwegian side, we have 4,000 members, and we are just now launching the American or international site.
Oh,
So
nice.
there are a lot of people are ready to answer questions, and yeah, the blog, there are workshops, there are webinars, a lot of activities. And then on Instagram, I'm a doctor underscore Torkel dot MD. It's a bit difficult, maybe Dr. Torkel. Yeah, I will post useful information and try to educate people on how to take charge of their own health through using these wearables.
Dr. Turkle, thank you so much for your time. This has been an amazing conversation, and I'm so thankful that you wanted to be on my podcast. So, I think the book you wrote is going to help a lot of people using the technology that we have and to use it wisely to help them create better lives. So, thank you for the gift of your
Mm,
time. I appreciate it very
yeah.
much.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was really a nice conversation. Thank you.
Same, same. You're welcome. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, check out my website, personalcoachfinder.com, and find someone who can help. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps today and make your life awesome, friends.